Hello, hello. Welcome to Starfinder Wednesday. We're here talking about the upcoming, soon to be on shelves near you, Character Operations Manual for Starfinder. My name is John Compton. I'm the senior developer.
And I'm Joe Piscini, lead designer for Starfinder. When's that book coming out?
That's going to be November 13th, so just 2 weeks from now. And
I knew the answer to that, I have to admit. I'm sorry. I pretended.
And it's already starting to ship out to some of our subscribers, but yeah, it's going to be available to the public as well as for PDF download on our site starting November 13th.
And at your friendly local game store.
That's right.
Paizo.com, all that.
Mm-hmm. But we wanted to see about showing off some of the material. So far, we've been showing off a whole lot about the new 3 classes on our blogs. Not only have we had the Meet the Iconics story for each of our 3 new iconic characters, but we've also had flash fiction for all 3 of them. And we've been doing some Twitch stream broadcasts right here about building sample characters for all 3 and showing off some of their abilities. Now's our opportunity to go over all of the other material in this book that isn't those 3 classes, which is super exciting.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. We had to pare down things a whole lot. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to share some of the things that we already looked at and we were like, oh, we cannot wait to share this thing in particular with you. But we also have a couple of polls coming up where we're going to bring up one of these topics and say, what is it from this list you most want to know about? And we'll use that to guide some of our conversations.
Yeah, and for each of those polls, we will have either will have had or will have, think about it for a while, blog posts coming up or already have come up that will explain more in detail about those various things. We'll get into it when we get into it, I suppose. But
yeah, there was a recent blog by Jason Tondro that was showing off some of the new racial options, and I'll have a new blog out about some of the class options tomorrow, I believe. And then we have one more for
the downtime system, that I'll be doing in a week or two. Yeah.
But if you want an advanced preview of that, stick around. So, Joe, which of these things do you think we should start off with first?
Oh, now you're asking the questions you know the answer to. Okay. I think we should start with new racial options, which we have a poll for. This is if you have a species that you have from the core rulebook, perhaps, but you want to tweak some of their options a little bit. And our poll here is for sort of the core races that we have in Starfinder. And we've also listed out kind of a hint at which specific thing we'll talk about for that species. But also know that we have new racial options for all the legacy races too that are in the core rulebook. So half-elf and dwarf and so on.
Yeah, and a lot of this really draws inspiration from some of the things that Pathfinder did in first edition, where it was saying, okay, your species, your ancestry, your race is giving you this ability. Let's give you some options to swap that out with A, B, or C. Sort of thing. But on top of that, each of these sections also provides several racial options swap out things such as new spells, new fighting styles, stuff like that, new feats. So some of these that you're seeing in the polls are all about those new feats and spells.
Yeah, and if you, I'm sure Peyton's letting you know in the chat, but if you want to vote, you just type a number for what you want to see. It looks like the Android ARM extension is already in the lead, which is great because we brought art of that.
We sure did. Yeah.
Get to in a moment, I'm sure.
But yeah, so in addition to all that, I mean, there are different ways of modifying some of the ability scores. There are new options for all the legacy races as well. So each one of our core ancestries and species is getting a full spread, so 2 pages of new content, and each of the legacy races is getting 1 page.
I'm going to show you. I'm just going to show you. I love it. So there's dwarves and elves. Do you want to talk about some of the flavor for some of these? I think they're pretty cool. Like there's the Warblood Vesk. Are you familiar with any of these offhand that you might?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm really excited about how some of the Sharon stuff is building off of some of the options that the Sharon already gets. So the communalism, let's see, remember.
We have a winner.
We sure do.
The Android ARM extensions just won.
Oh gosh, by far.
We should show the art of that then.
We should.
Yeah, I think that's our first.
There we go. So basically, this is allowing your Android to go gadget with all of your arms. And not only does this allow you to temporarily extend your arms and your reach with your weapons, but what I really love about this feat is that it allows you to either reach out towards something to grab onto and pull yourself up to, like you're doing chin-ups or lifting yourself up onto a platform, or just to anchor yourself down and then reposition yourself, not even directly underneath where you're dropping, but you can go anywhere within, I think it's like 15 feet and swing yourself wherever. So I think it has really fun utility options.
I definitely think of grappling hooks from various games when I think about that. And something that's cool, this is an Android alternate racial option, but the prerequisite for this feat is constructed racial trait, which of course Androids have, or the construct type. So if you're an SRO, you can have this as well. If you're any species that we have that has the construct type, then you will be able to use this feat as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the really important design considerations with that entire chapter is that rather than saying you must be a Shurin, you must be an android, everything is referencing an ability that other ancestries and species might have. So really helps to future-proof things, and possibly as we use those terms more often, you'll be able to add them onto a whole variety of different characters.
Yeah, exactly. Any species we create in the future that's a construct would be able to use this feat. But should we show them some art for the things they didn't pick?
Yeah. I think we have a really cool Kasatha. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the Kasatha options involve making the most of your forearms. I really love there's a feat called Four-Armed Hacker that lets you just like use 2 to 4 keyboards at once. And
so not hacking with machetes in this case, but
well, we have options for that
this
too.
One's got knives everywhere. So many knives.
Leg blades for days, as some people would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love the Kasatha stuff. And then we also have for the Vesk.
So
that's sort of a biohacker Vesk or science Vesk, which is, we usually get like soldier, hulking, tear your arm off sorts of figures, but I really like this guy. I really enjoy for the Vesk, we have a Vesk Venom option. So instead of just clawing people's faces off, you can bite them in the face instead. We are upstanding folk here. But you get to inject them with venom, and you can recharge that ability every time you're taking a 10-minute rest to regain stamina.
And in this case, that's something that replaces your armor savant. So you're not going to be as great with armor, which this art kind of represents maybe, and the fearless trait. But you also modify your natural weapons to be able to deliver that venom that we give you stats for in the book. So even though you didn't ask, we told you.
And I agree, Komodo Vesk, very much.
Yes. So let's talk about something else for a moment. This book also comes with archetypes, which we don't have a poll or art for today. No, we do have some art, don't we?
We sure do have some art. Yeah. Basically, when we looked through all the archetypes here, we thought to ourselves, well, when we did our character design streams and when we were doing our blogs, we covered all sorts of wonderful new character options, but we didn't cover the multitude of archetypes we have here.
There's 10 in the book.
10.
Yeah.
5 times as many as the core rulebook had.
Whoa.
Math. So what Joe and I did is we looked through these and we were like, what are our favorites? What are the ones that jump out and inspire us? Mm-hmm. So Joe, what did you choose?
I chose the medic. I told you before the stream. I don't know what's going on with us today, but
Joe assumes I listened to him during
yes. I love medic characters. Half of mine probably have some dabble in medicine at least and always want to do more stuff. I've already talked about the quicker trickler feat that's in this book that lets you administer serums of healing to your allies more quickly than you might otherwise. But the medic, another thing, I want to talk more broadly about archetypes really quick, because one thing we did in this book was start to make sure that there was variety in sort of class ability replacement. So the way an archetype works is you are told what levels you'll get cool new things, and that replaces things for your class at those levels. Mm-hmm. But maybe you don't want to like fully commit to 4 or 5 different levels worth of things where you're basically losing that from your class and gaining something cool, but maybe you don't want to give up that much of your class. And so what we did in here is we have several that are just 3 replacement abilities. So there's the free trader, which just replaces your 2nd level class feature. So you can have an entire archetype that stays with you your whole character, but you're only giving up one thing from your class. And so the medic is one that at 2nd level, 9th level, and 18th level, you're getting stuff. So something super useful early on and something super powerful later, and then something kind of in the middle. But otherwise, I'm the class that my character is through and through. And I really like the doctor, which I'm just going to look at right here. It does really cool stuff. I'll start with the least cool, which is treating up to 20 patients at a time with long-term care. I mean, you got to pay someone to do that. My character's busy doing cool things. But my favorite part of the doctor has like 4 bullet points of things it can do. Just that one ability for this in one archetype. But when you use equipment or an ability to heal someone and you go over their hit points, and we do have art. Thank you, Peyton. So this is the medic art. So when you heal someone more than their hit points, it actually restores some stamina points to them too, which is super, super useful. And there's some other things like you can treat disease more quickly. And if you are treating someone with long-term stability, you can actually wake them up and get them back in the fight.
I'm really excited not only about that disease one, because if you've ever been hit by a disease in Starfinder, you know that thing will ruin your day.
It's true.
But I'm also really excited about the restoring hit points to the point where you restore stamina as well, because that does not happen often.
No.
You usually need a couple different characters to restore both those pools.
Exactly, and that's at second level, so that's really strong. And I should say, Jason Tondro wrote that from our team, so maybe he's angling to be my best friend, but I really like it. How about you?
So you mentioned power just a moment ago, and I really love powered armor in Starfinder. That's when I start thinking about character concepts, I'm like, okay, this thing would be cool, this class would be awesome, but can I do this with powered armor as well? And I start looking for options to do it. And there are several different powered armor options in this book. One of them that I'm going to be covering in my blog tomorrow. But the archetype powered armor jockey, I keep on wanting to call it power armor junkie, because that's more me, is extraordinary for that. It doesn't give you a second or fourth level replacement ability. It really kicks in only at 6th level. But so long as you have that powered armor proficiency, it makes you extraordinary at walking around in your miniature mech. So not only does it make it easier for you to move around and you can travel faster and the like, but as you gain levels, you're also going to take that automatic strength score that your powered armor gives you, and you're going to slowly boost that up. So your strength in powered armor will exceed anything else that a PC could possibly get in a game, or at least short of dropping a starship on somebody. So the powered armor jockey for me is the pinnacle of things to look forward to in the archetype section of this book, because it does everything I want.
And going back to the sort of flexibility of these archetypes, you don't get powered armor until at least, if you save up your money, you save up your credits real good, maybe at 3rd or 4th level.
Yeah, but you don't even get the proficiency until 5th.
Exactly. So this archetype, the first replacement ability is at 6th level. So you're not gonna we didn't want to shoehorn in something at 2nd. It's like, you're really good at powered armor one day.
Yeah, look what you'll look forward to for the next 3 levels before your character dies right before 5th level, and you curse the entire universe. Yeah, so I really love that one. Do you just want to rattle off a couple other names of some archetypes in here?
Sure. There's the Starrite, who are all about building starships, not mechanically, but thematically, which I should point out.
Well, then they also tie into making things out of star metals.
The Espionage Specialist and the Esotericist are kind of cool niche archetypes that I like a lot. The Battle Flower has been a popular flavor concept for a long time, I think.
Yeah, because that's one that's tied in a little bit to our campaign setting as well, where there's this school of gladiatorial combat that happens on Verces, I believe.
I think so.
Where we have mentioned that there are the Battle Flowers of Verces. We haven't really said anything about them. It's sort of like,
until now,
agile characters? We don't know. And are they always soldiers? Are they always operatives? Or are they whatever the hell you want because it's an archetype now?
Yeah, you'd be a mystic battle flower. It's pretty cool.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, especially if you combine that with the Devourer connection, so that way you could just bite people's faces off while being a battle flower.
Dance, bite. Dance, bite.
Yeah.
It's one of those cool dance steps the kids are doing these days.
It's a good combination, or good use of our action economy.
Yeah. Well, we have so much to get through in here. Let's move on to something else.
All right, so I'm thinking it's time for another poll. So let's see about doing some class options. So we're going to explore some of the core class options. So not the new 3-1s, but the other 7. Yeah. So we've put the poll up there for you, as well as a quick little mention of what we'd be talking about. So Joe, what's some of the design work or design perspective that went into making these?
That's a great question. Let's ask Owen Casey Stevens. Owen, come on in. Owen? Nope, he's not coming.
I guess as the lead designer, you get to answer this now.
Oh, great. Make them cool. There's a lot of things. Designing classes is so complex and lengthy. A lot of things get left on the cutting room floor. So some of this is honestly cool ideas we've had that we just wanted to get into a book and out to people. I have the Solarian open in front of me. We're going to talk about it. I don't know. It's kind of trailing right now.
We still have another minute or two.
But people can see that it says shield there. And we've made no secret that there are shields in this book. And it only makes sense for at least one of our melee classes to have something that interacts with shields. And we're talking about the Solarian, who can create armor or weapons out of solar motes. Well, it tracks that they would also interact with this new rule system. So keeping everyone up to date is another useful design principle for new class options.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from having, well, at that point, 1.5 years or so of listening to feedback of what people have wanted a class to be able to do that wasn't necessarily an easy to achieve option with the core rulebook options, but that was a natural extension of what the class could conceivably do. Or looking at one of the core class features of that class and saying, how could we put a twist on this to have it behave in a different way or perform in a way that people would not expect, but does something really cool that isn't showing up anywhere else in the game? So let's see, what do we have? Oh, envoys. Awesome. Okay. So the envoy basically has this class ability called expertise, which says, hey, choose sense motive. I guess you have sense motive already, as well as one other class skill. Oh, is it tied? What?
No, I'm rolling my expertise die.
Oh,
my giant expertise die.
Sorry, I thought you were trying to do a tiebreaker here.
No.
This is why it's important to communicate with your GM. Jeez. So
it's your discretion.
Oh no, GM discretion, you fool. So this is an opportunity that you could be adding a D6 to a bunch of your skills, and you'd gradually get things that would key off of those skills to make them a little bit cooler when you use them. But one of the things I've run into at the table for Starfinder Society is this idea of the battle envoy, the person who's just like, yes, I will do the talking, but when the battle starts, that's why I have a power glove, you know? Yeah. This is for punching in faces. And so we now have a combat expertise envoy that says, you know what? It's lovely that you gave me this expertise die to improve my sense motive. I don't want it. What I want is to be able to punch or shoot or slice, and while I'm doing so, demoralize everyone around me. I want to combine damage with envoying to the maximum ability. So you're swapping out a lot of your just adding bonuses, expertise uses for combination combat diplomacy uses.
I'm still an envoy, right? If I take this option, I still have that flavor of sort of rogue, and if I want to talk, I can still talk, right?
Yeah, and you're still getting a lot of exploits and the like, but you're changing out one of your core features for that.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's like, to me, it's almost like adding new classes to the game in some ways without risking the complete upheaval that would cause.
Yeah. And still being able to look at that class, as well as all the new options that come out for that class in this book and future books, and saying, this still applies to me.
Exactly. We have some art for the non-chosen. You know, we're not going to neglect them. We have some operative art here for stunts. And this was really cool. This is one of our editor's favorite features, I think, was the... Do you want to talk about the operative stunts a little bit?
Sure. So they have a thing called Stunt and Strike. So right now, the operative has a thing called Trick Attack, where you make your skill check, you run up, you shoot, or you slice, or you stab, and you get to add bonus damage. And damage is wonderful. It's gratifying. But there's a certain level of style that just adding a couple of D8s to the damage roll doesn't necessarily convey. And Stunt and Strike is more about choosing several of your skills that are tied into your specialization, and being able to gain 2 to 3 different options where instead of getting your Trick Attack bonus damage, you're instead adding some sort of debuff to your opponent, or you're faking out everybody around you, or you're inspiring your allies, or something like that, where because you look so cool as you do that slide between the legs of the opponent and, you know, hit him with a baton, you are accomplishing something above and beyond what anybody else would be able to do while they're moving and striking.
And I see some questions. Someone's asking if this is an archetype, I think referring back to our envoy talk. And no, it's just a different class feature that replaces one of your current class features. So in this case, expertise is replaced, right? Yeah,
for the envoy, or Trick Attack for this operative. And so these are things that you choose to replace once you gain them. So we're talking about a lot of first level abilities, but you could ostensibly do just one of those swap outs when you're hitting 3rd level and have a 3rd level replacement thing.
Right.
But we have one other piece of art that we can show for these classes. Yeah, this is our Solarian using Solarian shield abilities. So the Solarian is really cool with the shield because not only are you gaining the defensive bonuses of the shield that you summon from thin air, by that I mean your stellar mode or your solar mode, but you can also bash people with it. And when you have an energy shield, it'd be really cool if you could do energy damage as well, which is exactly what you're doing with this weapon. So it's not going to do as much damage as if you'd chosen a solar weapon, but it'll instead be doing your unarmed strike damage. But if you put a Solarian weapon crystal into your shield, it starts to change up its properties. So I think that's really cool because I really love looking at Solarian weapon crystals and saying, wow, this isn't just restricted to a single type of character build.
Yeah.
This is available to all sorts of people.
Totally. And I really love the flavor we provided here as some suggestions, because just like with the weapon, you can choose what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
When you first get it. And that could be, that could be a buckler or a knight's shield or something simple, but it could also, we say, be let's see, a shining orrery orbiting your arm, which is, a model of a solar system, just like rotating around you. Or it could be spinning helicopter blades across your forearm, or stranger barriers, whatever that means. I'm in for spinning helicopter blades.
I'm really concerned that your Solarian's going to show up with like a ripcord on his arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, and it looks like people wanted to hear more about magical expertise for Envoy as well.
Yeah. So magical expertise is, you mentioned sort of earlier, Envoy, a little bit like a rogue in some ways, but it can also be, a lot of people call it the Space Bard.
Sure. I was thinking the roguish personality when I said it, but
I see.
It's a good point. That word has been used in tabletop role-playing games before.
Surprise!
Yeah.
But so the magical expertise is more about saying, okay, take that expertise die, put it to the side, give me some mystic spells. And so just as you would be gaining new ways of using your expertise die and increasing the size of it, you're instead gaining new levels of spell casting. It's not the full 6-level progression. It's not the full spell repertoire that a mystic would have, but you're gaining a small selection of spells as you gain levels that you can use to augment whatever the heck it is that you do as an envoy. Mix and match. Maybe you want to just be mind thrusting the people who won't listen to you talk, or maybe you want to be able to cast comprehend languages or tongues, so you can finally talk to everybody. Whatever it is, that's your choice. Or you want to be one of those super cool healer characters who can combine hit point healing and stamina healing.
Which somebody said Envoy with Mystic Cure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got it.
So that is also going to be a cool option. I'm also going to talk about another option tomorrow in the blog, which is all about disguise in a really cool way.
Spoilers. I'm not listening. All right. What's next? So much stuff.
We should probably go into one of these things where we kind of have in mind what we want to share, because we've chosen out some favorites again.
Oh, true.
So let's go on to spells.
Okay.
Because no new character option book of just everything under the sun or everything within the solar system or the galaxy book is going to be complete without a whole bunch of spells. And we sure did add a new spellcasting class too.
Yes, in this book. So we gave them some spells, believe it or not. And of course, there's a spell list for the Witch Warper, which covers not just the spells in this book that they can cast, but in previous books as well. So we tell you everything that's on their list. And in this book, we have 62 new spells. I counted them twice, so I'm pretty sure that's the right number. And of course, now we have 3 spellcasting classes. People familiar with the core rulebook will know that some spells can be cast by the Mystic, some by the Technomancer, and some by both. Now we have spells that all 3 can cast, that only the Mystic and Technomancer, the Mystic and Witch Warper, or the Technomancer and Witch Warper can cast. So we picked a few of each to talk about. So
yeah, we wanted to show off what is something that only a certain class can use, and then what's something where there's shared territory. So
it's a really interesting guiding design principle when you're looking at spells. It's what does this make sense for someone to be able to do? Which spellcasters feasibly would be into something like this?
And also, what sort of spells can I make that only this class can have and feel like they are really enhancing the flavor of that class? And Witch Warper, just through reading through the spell section, really looked like it was fun to create, because it's and then I said, heck with your reality, let's fight in a different plane of existence sort of thing. Or what if I tore you into another dimension where your legs are on top and your head is in the shadow plane.
And one thing we did for this was hire a bunch of different people to write spells for us. So previously, a lot of the core class options were Alex Sagunis, as well as a fair number of the new racial options that we covered. And I wanted to say too, the archetype you picked, the powered armor junkie, that was Ron Lundeen, our own. Despite his Pathfinder expertise, was able to join us in space for some powered armor style. But for the spells that we're going to talk about, I want to talk about Commune with Planet.
Yeah.
I left a pause there for those who might have been expecting a different word.
Heck with Commune with Nature.
Yeah. It's a whole planet. So this is a mystic spell that you can cast, mystic only, that you can cast on a planet or from orbit, and it'll tell you up to 3 things about it, which can include if there's intelligent life there, if there are any unusual or dangerous creatures. I'm going to look down at the book now for the remaining things. Major settlements, that's another big one, which I want to know if I'm on a planet or approaching it. And technological installations and the sort of ecological state of the place. Is it ravaged by war? Is it water world, or
is it radioactive?
Yeah, right.
And I really love the flavor of how you could run this at the table as a GM, because they could cast Commune with Planet and be like, "Hey, Planet, how you doing? You're not like full of volcanism, are you?" It's like, "Nah, it's cool. You can land over here."
Yes.
Thanks, Planet.
But mystical. How about a Witch Warper only, since you were talking big game on them?
Yeah. And for Witch Warper, I really wanted to look for some of the really high-end spells to show off everything that the Witch Warper could do. And the one that jumped out at me is called Usher Apocalypse, as in call in the cataclysm, which...
That's second level, or?
I believe it's 6.
Oh, okay.
So it's at the top of your game, and it's one of those spells that kind of looks at the old Storm of Vengeance spell and says, that's a cool idea, but let's make it Witch Warper. So it starts off by having just explosions happen, and eventually those shatter the ground, causing difficult terrain, and all the while, some of this is real transformation of the world, but part of it is just shadow magic, so it's quasi-real. So even after the spell fades, it's almost as though reality restores itself. But after the ground shatters, then like the air starts to vaporize, and just everything turns tipsy-turvy.
It's one of those apocalypses, not one of the good ones, not one of the peaceful, quiet apocalypses where the gray goo just kind of washes over you.
Oh, okay. As opposed to like,
peace.
And I shall kill the world with candy.
Yes, I mean... maybe next book.
Yeah, future character idea. But so Usher Apocalypse really says to me what a Witch Warper is capable of by saying, everybody I can see, for as far as I can see, just change how the world works. Done.
I'll talk about a Technomancer only. So the spells I chose help people and give you information and cool other things. This one's called Instant Upgrade. It's Technomancer only. And it lets you go, poof, you have a biotech augmentation on you now. A cybernetic augmentation. Very, very key.
I didn't ask for this.
Yes. Well, it's funny, you're looking at your arm because one of them is a prosthetic limb and another is a cybernetic arm. So you can definitely say, have dark vision eyes or have a new arm for about 10 minutes per level. And then it'll go away and you don't have to worry about it.
So this is something you could do to even cause somebody who doesn't have an arm to just gain a cybernetic arm?
For cybernetic arm, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, whoa.
Isn't that great?
So you could basically go to a Bantrid and be like, bam! And it's just like, huh!
Yes.
Flexing, sort of swoltrid sort of thing.
And I don't think there's a limitation on, how many times you can be affected by this spell. So if you have a party full of Technomancers.
I like the idea of having like 4 Raya Technomancers all with a spell and one unfortunate 5th party member. You kick down the door, everybody's just like, get ready, Tech in the front. Oh gosh, it's made of legs.
So many legs. Yeah, I think it's a fun spell. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I could see now that we're talking about it, like a Witch Warper version of this spell, where it's like this is a reality where Bantrids have one arm, but we did go with the Technomancer only route, where it's specifically cybernetic. You're creating these augmentations, and you're probably allies.
But the Witch Warper does provide an option kind of like that, because one of the things that we borrowed for the spell list for the Witch Warper and put in here was Baleful Polymorph, so they might not have asked for this arm, but they have it now.
Yeah.
Also, they're like half as tall.
Yeah. No big deal.
The mass had to come from somewhere. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that one because I think that it has all sorts of wonderful no pun, but augmenting
That is
abilities.
a pun.
Well,
No, you meant it.
I like playing characters who buff
I
other
thought you said,
people.
I like playing with language. It just makes me. Anyway,
Yeah, whatever.
so we've talked about very specific for class specific spells. Let's talk about some multiple class spells.
Yeah, the one that really stands out to me is the one that everybody in our current spellcaster repertoire can cast, and that is called Gravity Well. So this is something that Solarians get to play with a little bit through their class abilities,
Sure.
but now some other classes get to do it by casting this 3rd level spell that says, hey, that point in space, make it like a 15 or 20 foot burst and just take everybody inside that area, try to knock them prone, and then try to drag them into the center of this thing. And then let me cackle. So yeah, kind of like
Cackling
that.
optional.
Cackling is optional. Well, I mean, there's a somatic component somewhere in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
sure.
So that's just a really cool crowd control style spell that that plays with gravity, which is something that is very sci-fi, where we don't necessarily do that as much in a fantasy RPG.
Totally. And that would feel pretty wild if you were in a 0G environment on some derelict spaceship. And suddenly, now there's not only is there gravity, but you're getting sucked into the.
Oh, I just imagine doing that like on the border of the starship that you're on and space and just tearing them into the void. Like, wait, this isn't what the spell was intended to
Space
do.
them. Well, we intend them to be fun, right? So
We do.
as long as it, we wrote down some names of other cool spells just to tease them. Like I said, there's 62, so we're not going to cover all of them. But there's Awakened Computer, Song of the Cosmos, and Starstorm, which are all pretty evocative, I think, and tell you kind of what you need to know about those. Yeah. So
there's a lot to look forward to with spells. But we had an opportunity in this book to explore some things that were not standard options for classes, but rather different methods of play. And so when you get toward the end of the book, you're going to find not only some new downtime options, well, actually a downtime system, that is, but also some new Starship combat roles. But I'm thinking, let's go ahead and start with downtime.
Yeah, please. I'm excited. So Downtime is a new subsystem for Starfinder. It was written by Liz Liddell and Landon Winkler, and I worked on it a lot in-house too. And we put together something really cool, I think, which is, there's a lot of long Starship voyages if you're doing it right. And I mean, I'm kidding. However you like to play,
You roll a lot of d6s. You have X many days. What are you even doing?
But if you're going to near space, if you're going to the vast, you are spending a lot of time out in space with your crewmates. And it's, you can hand wave that stuff. You can have fun in character interactions, but this downtime system provides not only for those situations, but anytime you maybe are traveling across an entire planet. That can take a while, believe it or not. This gives you something to do with those days off, kind of. It's sort of in between your adventures and your very 6-second rounds, like high intensity, everything's moving really quickly, while in real life moving really slowly.
But one of the things I like about this system is that it says, okay, here's the general idea of what I wanted to be doing just for flavor purposes, but now it gives me some sort of little mechanical edge as well.
Yeah, and so you can see, wow, I'm surprised at our poll right now. We've got carouse and entertain. So there are 24 downtime activities in here. Some of them are referring to things that already exist in the core book, right? There's a few scattered in there of ways you can spend a whole day, like what do we call it? Convalescing, I think, which is just resting.
We have retraining in there, which is
exactly, rebuilding your drone. The basic things that might take a long time anyway. But of those 24, many of them are brand new and let you do cool new things and get bonuses potentially for multiple days. So some of these take 1 day to do, and some of them you can take multiple days and get a better benefit. Some of them require taking maybe a week to do. And getting a benefit that might last for the following week or something like that. So there's a lot of cool little options, and we even put a sidebar in here of just sort of the common ones that you might want to do in case you don't want to fiddle with all that. But everyone else at the table is like, yeah, on Tuesday I'm gonna do this, or not Tuesday, but second day, whatever we call it, and then I'm gonna do this, and then this for 3 days. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna maintain readiness, and if we get interrupted by a fight, then I'm gonna be ready to fight. Oh, we got Explore Futures. That's a cool one.
Yeah.
Okay, so Explore Futures. This one I like because it sounds very mystical, and indeed you can use mysticism to sort of to spend all day just like meditating on one particular person or character that you know well, so maybe an ally or yourself, and just exploring their future and seeing what might happen to them. But if you have access to a tier 5 computer or higher, you can instead use a computer's check and use some fancy algorithms and maybe spend all day sort of programming potential outcomes into your computer and see what you think might happen. What the probabilities say are likely to happen.
That's kind of the darkest sci-fi timeline. It's like, well, Joe, we put your we let a computer observe you for 4,000 hours, and now it's predicted your entire rest of your life.
I mean, exactly. What does that benefit-wise? What does that come to? It means that whoever's future you explore on the following day. So you spend all day doing this, roughly. I mean, we say that you get to rest for 8 hours, so that's a given. You get to get some HP back. That doesn't count as that doesn't preclude you from doing a downtime activity. But otherwise, you kind of have to chill out, not participate in combat of any kind, that kind of thing. But you spend your day doing that, and then the following day, the character whose futures you explored gets to reroll a D20 roll, and that's just. So attack, skill check, saving throw, whatever. You can be like, that one, reroll that one. Because I saw this coming.
This is what I was warning you about.
Yes, exactly.
We talked about this.
The white rabbit. Yeah, so I really like that one. I think that was a great choice, chat. Good job.
Yeah, and that's, I see that somebody's mentioning that's a reason to have a high tier computer. So not only should you remember that you have a computer on your starship whose tier is equal to half the tier of your starship, but you can always buy a computer and you can then throw all the miniaturization on it and have it in something the size of this D6.
Or if you just, again, so this, I foresee this being used a lot in starship travel just because of the time it takes. But again, I mean, anytime you're just hanging out, anytime you want to even retcon, I would say what you did between now and the last adventure you had as a group. I think it's fun to explore those options and say, yeah, I saw working out was almost winning there for a minute. Just kind of surprised at.
Yeah, I'm just, because of the smack talk that usually happens at my tables, I'm thinking about having a miniaturized tier 5 computer with us as we are trapped underground in a cave. And it's just like, well, if we ever get out of here alive, I foresee you doing something that is way less dumb than getting us trapped in this cave.
That's fair.
Roll D20s.
Yes.
But yeah, so a whole bunch of cool downtime options in here. So good choice on exploring futures. But we still have a little bit of time that we have to go through. Could you just give us a quick snapshot of what it means to lounge? Because that's the one that I look at and I'm like, so does that just mean I'm doing nothing?
No, that means well, I think we have art of this, right? Did we bring art?
Oh, yeah, we have art of this particular downtime.
Yeah, playing vid games.
Yeah, Kick Punch.
Which, yes, we call informally Kick Punch around here. But that's Veloro, our iconic Vanguard, hanging out, lounging, playing some video games. And we have, you might be playing card games, or you might even, so for the most part, you're probably... you need access to good or luxurious crew quarters, which is brings up another point for this system, is that we wanted to incorporate some of the things you might have on a starship and say, in this case, if you have good quarters, then you can lounge in there and feel comfortable. Whereas if you have poor quarters, maybe not so much. Maybe it's not relaxing enough to get you the benefit, which I will tell you now is getting temporary hit points equal to half your character level the following day. So it's just a little extra, and a +1 morale bonus to the first saving throw that you attempt. You just make yourself feel better. It's self-care. It's good self-care. It comes with you into the next day. And I think on the list also is entertain, which is directly tied to lounge. I was going to, sneak that in there. If entertain was picked, I was going to sneak in lounge, and vice versa, because entertain, if you have some crewmates who are lounging, you can entertain them. You can attempt to entertain them. And if you succeed, then they lounge better. They get more hit points and a bigger save on their morale bonus. And if you just like really rock that and make everyone really happy, then you also get the benefits of lounging when you entertain. So there's a lot of options here, and a lot of them interact with each other in positive ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to start looking ahead toward the other optional systems that are in the back of the book, namely Starship combat rules, which is something that we've been sharing with the public that these are coming quite a while now. And these are also kind of a popular demand sort of situation where, you look at your Mystic and you're like, all right, I guess I'm going to...
position in the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck, Gunner.
They didn't have a lot of natural ways to contribute to Starship combat. And so this is an opportunity for us to say, okay, how can we make these super physical characters and these very magically inclined characters have a good role where they can jump in and say, I'm going to be the expert at this. And so the answer to that are the magic officer and the chief mate. So let me just start off with the chief mate, because the chief mate is, if you're familiar with the Obozaya pre-generated character, you have survival, you have athletics, you have acrobatics. Okay, none of those show up in Starship Combat. You can be a gunner and you're good at it, but what if you just want to basically go into the bowels of the ship and punch the engine to make it go faster? It's a little bit more refined than that, but that's kind of the basic idea behind it. So you have things like hard turn, which is where you're making an athletics or acrobatics check to basically manipulate the steering of the ship to make your ship turn faster and have a better maneuverability than it normally would. Or access maintenance panel, where your engineer is saying, I want to divert energy this turn. And you say, stand aside, and you just tear paneling off of the interior of your starship to access all of the power core components so your engineer can do a better job.
I also think of it as being strong enough to get those dang extension cords to connect, just...
I don't know, every time in like a show you connect extension cords, that usually results in damage. But,
yeah, but not in this case. So.
Yeah, don't lick the power cord.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But then you can basically have the engineer divert power to two different systems instead of one, because they were able to do so much work now that they didn't have to use a damn screwdriver. Or when you get up to higher levels, you have a thing called targeting aid, which is where you say, okay, wow, I was going to use that fire at willpower that lets me shoot multiple weapons as a gunner. Gee, but I have to aim both of them independently. What if you just only had to aim one and you had your chief mate downstairs kicking the other laser into position, so all you had to do was pull the trigger? Basically, the chief mate can make an athletics or acrobatics check to remove that penalty for firing at will or using broadside, because they're helping to forcibly redirect the weapons that you're using. So it's just a whole bunch of crawling around in the bowels of the ship and wrenching it into place to perform how you want it to.
Yeah, and I want to jump in real quick and say that Kate Baker wrote these, and she is a prolific author for us now, but also has run a ton of Starship Combat in Starfinder Society, including, our very first demos at Gen Con, for instance. So she knocked this out of the park and gave us some really cool things that we were hearing were kind of missing for certain characters. And so, and especially we're adding a new spellcaster right to the mix with this book, and very melee focused Vanguard. So
Yes.
it's a perfect opportunity to kind of throw these out into the wild and have cool things you can do. So speaking of a new spellcaster, there's the Magic Officer, which lets people with mysticism do things. It's basically most of your actions are going to be keyed off mysticism, if not all. I believe it's all. And you can just basically supercharge your starship, which that's how I think of it. I think it's really cool. Eldritch Weapon is an action you can take that increases you sort of charge one of the starship's weapons and increases its range by 5. And in 5 hexes, and in my mind makes it look really cool and probably green and
probably
crackly, but whatever you want. And then the other one I really like is Mystic Haze, which just puts out this mystical magical static for other starships that are trying to target you with something, or just trying to find you. So their screens all go wonky, and now you have +1 to AC. It's harder for them to perform certain science officer actions. And what else? There's something else.
I mean, with this ability, I really think of all of those TV shows and movies where they're like, well, the only way that we're going to be able to defeat this enemy starship is to fly into this nebula and hope that the electrons will stop them from finding us. Hell with it. Summon our own.
Yeah.
Magic your own nebula around your own ship, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to interact with another starship that isn't focused on piloting or gunnery, which is kind of cool. So it increases your own defenses and sort of negates some of their advantages potentially. Yeah,
and so one of the other great things about having these two other options, these starship roles, is that it provides much more opportunity for people to bounce around between different roles. Because when we only had the 5, it was easy to have, especially at a larger table, all of the roles fill up. And there was a lot less moving in my experience. But now that we have more of these roles, somebody might say, okay, my Technomancer is going to start as a science officer, and then it's going to jump over to being a magic officer, and then I'm going to engineer for a little while. And I like the movement of that.
And I don't know if we mentioned this, but there can be as many chief mates as you like, despite the chief name. I think we even say, deck officer is often used if you have multiple. And I think as many magic officers as you want too. Is that true?
I believe that's true.
Yeah. I mean, generally you can't stack specific actions, but you can have multiple people in that role doing different things.
But you can also be doing other actions beyond that,
Yeah.
because this is adding in several minor actions as well. Minor actions are something that if you've read through the Starship Combat section are really easy to overlook because they're right at the very end. But it's an option for when you don't have somebody doing the gunning, or you don't have somebody piloting, or you're having to split your attention, where you can do a major Starship crew action like all the rest of the chapter, or you can kind of absent-mindedly shoot the guns at a penalty, or pilot at a penalty without doing a stunt. We're adding in more minor actions. So if you want to be doing just a cursory scan of an opponent's starship, you can now do that.
The flavor of these is that the computer on your starship is doing it for you, right? And so it's not as good as you are doing it by any stretch, but you can still be done.
But on top of that, we've also added in a couple of open crew actions. And open crew actions don't require you to be any particular role on the starship. Instead, these are something that anybody can do with their action for the round. So if your captain does not want to taunt the enemy starship this round or encourage, that's fine. You have another option. And my favorite from this chapter is called Feign Disaster, where you basically program your ship or overload one of the systems in a very minor way that appears to your opponents as though like your ship's about to blow up in a cinematic way. So it can trick their science officer into turning off their scanners so that they don't just get zapped to Kingdom Come by the resulting radioactive explosion. So I really love the flavor of that one, where it's just like, we have to trick them, like make whatever seem.
Just vent an airlock,
Exactly.
Space trash, and looks like we're about to implode. There's some flavorful stuff in here. It's really cool. Do we have I think we had some questions. I'm seeing one a couple times about new spells that can be used in Starship Combat. That is still not something that we're exploring in terms of sort of mixing tactical combat, which is where you would generally cast spells, and Starship Combat, which is a lot vaguer in terms of how much time is passing and how long a round is, that sort of thing. So not that I know of. There are a lot of spells in here, though.
Let's see. I'm seeing a question about any clue how we can implement the new options in Starfinder Society. So I know that Thurston Hillman has already done a lot of reading through Character Operations Manual for looking ahead to see what sorts of things we would put in. There's certainly a lot of this that in my reading of it, I suspect a whole lot of it will be showing up in Starfinder Society for the character options. As far as the Starship crew roles, that's a conversation that's gone back the better part of a year at this point. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about incorporating those into Starfinder Society. But I'll let Thirsty be the one to deliver the final news and exact details on that.
We know he's working hard on it, for sure.
But one of the things that I have seen much more directly is Thurston Hillman wrote up all of the new pre-generated characters at level 1, 4, and 8 for the new Starship, or for the new Character Operations Manual classes. And those went through me for some development. They've gone through editing. I know that they're just now wrapping up. So I think those are going to be available either around the time of release or just shortly after.
Oh, cool.
But they're far along in the creation process.
Yeah, I took a look at them too. They're really pretty neat. And I love how pregens, I'm just going to babble about pregens for a second, because I do love how pregens capture both the essence of a class and some of the flavor of the character that we've built for our sort of iconic characters, even with sometimes very limited space on those pregens, because we want to explain kind of everything to newer players. And if you don't know what a pre-generated character is.
So this is a character that is already designed in-house. So if you show up to a game and you say, I don't have a first level character and I just want to sit down and play, you have that. Or if you're new to Starfinder Society and it's a higher level table, you have a level 4 or level 8 character that you can just pick up, play, and still earn credit with toward whatever character you're going to build. But yeah, I mean, like, making these pre-generated characters is a lot of fun because we read the backstories for them and we say, okay, well, how can we reflect this in their story? Or we look at the art and we say, how can we make that happen? Like, we looked at Veloro and we said, he appears to have an energy shield in his art. What do, like, flipped over to the shields. That is not energy shield. Looked back to the Vanguard. Oh, there's a Vanguard power that lets you summon your own energy shield. Yeah, let's put that in. Let's make that happen.
I will say for Valora too, Thurston and I were talking about sort of what options we might use, and I suggested one of the new Lashunta alternate racial traits, which is rugged, which I'll just read it to you. It's some Lashuntas express their species' love of learning by focusing on physical training rather than academic pursuits. So you get toughness as a bonus feat instead of students, which gives you some bonuses to some skills. So this, Valoro grew up kind of hard Scrabble, punching things and scavenging. So he got some street learning that I think applies to his character better. So I think that's ended up in the pre-gen, but if not, it would have been cool.
Yeah, and all this is coming off of people asking us questions in chat. So if you have any questions, be sure to @officialpaizo in the chat so that we can find those questions easily.
For sure.
All right, let's see. I'm seeing one. Are we speaking of an ambassadorial envoy or Takeshi Kovacs style of envoy?
Who's Takeshi Kovacs?
Oh no, they're calling me on this one. That is not a reference I know right offhand.
Oh boy. All right, so someone explain the reference to us, and then we'll answer your question. Biggest challenge in developing the new ship roles. I mean, so I think Owen and Casey Stevens developed that again. But I have to imagine that Kate Baker gave us some really solid stuff to work with, just because, like I said, she had so much experience with that system running it, and that's really where you learn the most. We do a lot of work here in the theater of our own minds, saying how is this going to play out at a table, and that's pretty accurate. The more we do it, we can kind of predict. It's like, okay, we have certain player archetypes. We know the sort of cheese weasel who's going to look for every possible loophole to make something that is more powerful than everyone else at the table, so they can sort of run with it.
Yeah. And as far as design considerations goes with those starship roles, part of the challenge is looking at what the rules have left space for, but that we haven't really addressed. Like there's a pilot stunt that it can improve your maneuverability a little bit, but otherwise we just don't play with maneuverability, at least not in an upward way. Like if you have too much armor, you lose maneuverability. If you're too big, you lose maneuverability. But we don't really enhance it. So that was a really natural thing for the chief mate to be able to do.
Yeah.
Looks like it's from Altered Carbon, which is one of my strengths is that I bring in a whole bunch of live play experience, but I am not as familiar with TV shows and the like.
I haven't watched that yet, but I heard there's a really cool weapon in it that I would love to just steal for Starfinder. So it returns its ammunition to itself, which we have the returning weapon fusion, obviously, but it's cooler than that. Anyway, spoilers maybe. I don't know. Were there any themes that weren't mentioned in the character building streams? If so, what are some other cool ones? So what we decided to do for those streams was say, here's all the themes, and we'll give you a little bit of info about them, and then whichever one you pick, we'll explore a little bit more. And so I don't know if you noticed, but the first stream we did, we had them all in there, and then the next stream we had all but the one that was picked for the first stream, and so on. So I can read you those themes real quick,
because I know there's an athlete, there's a noble.
Noble
let's see, we
scion,
have the guard, we have the law enforcement officer, or whatever the
law
officer
officer.
name is.
Yep. 3 more.
Okay, we have the sensate.
Yes.
We have
The last 2 are sort of related. Think Aladdin.
Oh, we have a grifter.
Yeah.
And was there just a criminal one?
Street rat.
Street
Wow.
rat. Oh.
Aladdin is not a criminal, sir. Thank you very much.
I see more about your clue now.
I don't buy that. Yeah, it had to happen. There'd be rebellion. So those are the themes that are new in this book. And you can go check out the other streams if you want to learn more about a few of them.
I see a question. Any cool stuff the soldier gets that you want to share?
Absolutely not. No, we decided not to do the soldier for this book. No, I'm just kidding.
The soldier already got enough stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say right off the bat for soldier is that in the new racial options, for the core rulebook, races in particular, I think like 3 of them ended up getting their own soldier fighting styles. So if you want to be the 4-armed Kasatha warrior and just emphasize the ever-living heck out of that, you can. But if you want even more soldier options, then you can flip right over to the 4 pages we have on soldiers, which have some new fighting styles like the hunter or the, it's called, hang on. The Wrathful Warrior. Yeah. That's right. So if you have been missing having barbarians in Starfinder and you want to be able to rage, the Wrathful Warrior is going to be the fighting style for you. So you're able to gain bonuses to damage and will saves, but a penalty to AC, details. Because you're going to gain some temporary hit points. You're later on going to get an ability called Close Enough to Kill, which says, hey, did you just miss with an attack? you have resolve for a reason. It's not about bleeding out on the floor. It's for using for this, where you say, I missed, but I'm still going to do minimum damage anyway. So things like that, where you just get up close and personal and destroy whoever it is. And by the end, you might have a few hit points left.
There's also feat boosts, which lets you, in place of gear boosts, boost your combat feats. And there's a bunch of those. So that's pretty exciting.
I think I saw pretty much the vast majority of the combat feats that show up in the core rulebook are boosted
there's a lot
by this.
Mm-hmm. Do any of the comm archetypes or feats help non-operatives be more effective with small arms?
Let's see. I can think of two things that are adjacent to that answer.
Okay.
One of them is that the Solarian's Solar Flare manifestation is one where you get a ranged option instead that acts like a small arm. But one of the things that's cool about it is that instead of adding half your level like you would with most small arms, it automatically adds your full level. So you're, really competitive on the damage level. But the other one that is close to this, but not quite for small arms, I know that there's a soldier gear boost that lets you add your full damage or your full level bonus on operative weapons, where normally you would only add half. So I think that's really cool too.
Yeah.
But as far as small arms in particular, I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head.
There's so much in this book, John. I don't know how we'd keep it all in our heads at once, but it's a good question. We got another one who's the Hidden Twig is saying we got to see what Solarians do with shields, and we know Vanguards use them. Yes.
Yep.
What are soldiers doing with shields? Well, they do get shields for one, and so they can use them much in the way. I mean, shields are for everyone who wants them too, with the feat that lets you have proficiency with them, so they can do what you do with shields, which is increase your AC. Sort of direct your shield toward a specific opponent to get a higher sometimes bonus to your AC against that opponent specifically, and in some cases attack with that shield. So the Solarian gets to just attack with their solar shield whenever they want. Specific shields might allow you to attack or not. So you could definitely get your bulky armor soldier even bulkier and armorier. That's a word. Or you can decide you want to smash people with your shield if you want.
And what I'm remembering from this is that some of the shields even have some armor upgrade slots.
Yeah, each shield is a little bit different and provides some benefit that, and we're just exploring that space now, so it's pretty exciting.
Because I remember when I first started looking at Starfinder and was like, oh, are there shields in the core rulebook? And the answer was not really. There was the Titan shield armor upgrade. I had like level 14 for powered armor. I was like, well, we'll see what. But the shields have a limited list of armor upgrades that they can incorporate, and some of the armor upgrades you've seen already that allow for shield themes do slot into your shield.
We're running a little low on time, but it looks like we got another question. Yeah.
So an odd question. I saw we got I saw we got shields and stuff for Solarians. Are there any changes to the old manifestations for Solarian, like a buff or stuff for Solarian armor? There's not a change to how those two features work, but there are a bunch of new Solarian powers and manifestations.
Or revelations, yeah.
Revelations, that's the term I'm looking for. And I'm really excited about those because a lot of them are really expanding the ways that a Solarian can manipulate and control the battlefield. So there are ones that allow you to like absorb damage for people or boost your allies' damage. There are other ones that allow you to do combat maneuvers at range, to be able to just pew pew at a range. Or what I really love is there's one for, I think it's about 6th level, that is called Ricochet, where if you have the Solar Flare manifestation, then if you hit somebody, then you can potentially bounce your shot off of the first target and hit a secondary target who might even be around a corner that you couldn't see. So it's less about changing how the core mechanics of the Solarian work and more about increasing the number of options you have every time you gain a level.
Yeah, and a lot of those are keyed to the new manifestations, of course, because we want to give you cool new revelations you can use specifically with this new manifestation you've chosen. But there are also ones for if you are using solar armor, you can still get some new revelations out of this book for sure.
So I think with that, we should see about wrapping things up. Before we do formally wrap things up, though, I do want to mention that our Punch and Crawl GM, who would normally follow after this, is still sick, so there will not be a Punch and Crawl broadcast after this stream. But it's been really cool showing off all of Character Operations Manual. This is really exciting for me in particular because I got to read it as a fan rather than working on it as a designer.
That might help.
Whereas you got to be arms deep in the patient
from
for so
inside.
long.
Yeah, that was good. Well, I like the medic archetype, so that worked out.
So it's been really cool sharing all of this with all of you. Keep on looking ahead to several more preview blogs. We're going to have one tomorrow. We're going to have another one next week. And then we look forward to seeing how this works out in the wild for all of you playing home games or Starfinder Society.
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yep. You can get this either on Paizo.com or at your friendly local game store. Again, November 13th.
Thanks for tuning in.